أعوذ بالله من الشيطان الرجيم بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم والصلاة والسلام على أشرف المرسلين سيدنا محمد وعلى آله وصحبه وسلم تسليما كثيرا. We start off by praising Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala and sending our peace and blessings upon our master Muhammad sallallahu alayhi wasallam. We ask Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala to bless us with beneficial knowledge and understanding and wisdom. We ask Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala to grant us the ability to overcome our own selves, to purify our hearts and our gazes. We ask Allah to grant us consistency, istiqamah, in all our actions and all our sayings. And we ask Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala to grant us sincerity in all our actions and all our sayings. We renew our intentions right now. We renew our intentions. We say to ourselves, in our hearts, Ya Allah, we come here for your sake. نجدد النية في قلوبنا ونخلص الأمر لله تعالى. So inshallah we renew our intentions so we could be completely sincere, so we can find our scale heavy on Yawm al-Qiyamah with the actions and the coming to the masjid that we did, because it's 32 degrees right now. I think it was 32 last time I checked right now. 32 degrees. 32 degrees means it's freezing. But alhamdulillah, we're blessed to be in America, and we have modernity, and we have a nice beautiful green carpet, nice lights. The lights here need to get changed, they hurt the eye a lot. Inshallah, one thing at a time. The light gives off heat, but we have a heating system in the masjid. It's 70 degrees. And alhamdulillah, it's a blessing from Allah. We thank Allah for that. But it's cold. You come out your way to come to the masjid. It would really suck. It would really be a great loss if you come to the masjid and you're insincere and you don't get any reward for it. So we, inshallah, renew our intentions. We came here to come closer to Allah. We came here to come closer to the masjid. We came here to meet pious friends, to make pious friends, to meet people that love Allah and Allah loves them. Inshallah, we continue our Monday night Tazkiyah series. And like I said in the last class, it's bittersweet now. And it's a bit exciting because the book is almost done. There's about like 10, 15, 20 pages left in the book, and we officially enter today the last portion of the book, the third part of the book. And the third part of the book is called Implementing Worship, Part 3. And it's on page 199. So part 3, Implementing Worship, comes after part 1 and part 2. And it took 200 pages to cover part 1 and part 2. So if we think about it, 200 divided by 2 is 100, or 1, right? 200 divided by 2 is 100. So it's not exactly even down the middle, but we could think that half of the book, pretty much half of the book, is abandoning negative habits, and the other half of the book is instilling good character or instilling good habits. So half of the book, half of the 200 pages of this book, it's about 220 pages. The last 20 pages is what we're in now. But the first half is abandoning negative habits, abandoning bad things, navigating illnesses of the heart. Navigating illnesses of the heart, as we want to call it. Abandoning negative habits. Oh, yeah, exactly 100 pages. Exactly 100 pages. Arrogance is page 99, and that's the last chapter. So it started on page 20, and arrogance is about 20 pages. Yeah, the first half of the book is about 100 pages. Half of the book is abandoning negative habits, and the other half of the book is instilling good character, which is what we've been talking about for the past 6 months since right before the summer, when we were doing it in Patterson, when we moved the class to Patterson for a couple of weeks. And wallahi, we missed this masjid a lot. Alhamdulillah, we're back here. It's not about the size. It's not about the size. So this masjid is comfortable, mashallah, I love it. So we were talking about repentance, pure intentions, forthcomingness, sidq with Allah, patience, shukr, hope, reliance upon Allah, contentment, refraining from worldly indulgence, loving Allah, taqwa, God consciousness, and then al-muhasaba, which is self-accountability or holding yourself accountable. And then the last sub-chapter of the second part of the book that we were in for the past 5 weeks was fulfilling the rights of others. And we spoke about fulfilling the rights of the Muslim in general. In general, your Muslim brother and sister has rights on you. Then we spoke about fulfilling the rights of the parents. And then we spoke about fulfilling the rights of the spouse. And then we spoke about fulfilling the rights of your relatives and then your neighbors. And then fulfilling the rights of your friend, your Islamic friend. And then fulfilling the rights of your teacher. And that's it. We finished the second part of the book. And now we enter, with a grand entrance, the third part of the book. It's about 30 pages. And that's implementing worship. And I'm happy that the author does this. I'm happy that the author brings this in, because this book is Tazkiyah. It's not called Tazkiyah, it's called Rising Soul. We're going by a book, but there's hundreds of books that are on Tazkiyah. Monday night is Tazkiyah. Tazkiyah is purification. Purification of your heart, yani. Purification of your soul, yani. We said this 100 times. قَدْ أَفْلَحَ مَنْ تَزَكَّى قَدْ أَفْلَحَ مَنْ زَكَّاهَا. He was successful. He has succeeded. The one who purified himself, and he purified his heart, his gaze, purified his soul. And Islam comes, as we mentioned multiple times, and every single aspect of Islam comes to help the individual purify himself, purify his heart, to come closer to Allah. Allah always says He sent the Prophet with the kitab and the hikmah, with the book and the hikmah, and وَيُزَكِّيهِمْ. Allah always mentions, when He sent down the Prophet of God, or all the prophets, He mentions the reasons why they came down was to teach them the book that was sent down, and to وَيُزَكِّيهِمْ, and to purify them. So the ultimate goal is purification, purifying your heart and your soul, purifying your heart and your soul. In order to purify your heart and your soul, in order to do that, the first thing you have to do is acknowledge or understand any bad qualities that you have. And that's why it took 100 pages to talk about the bad things: arrogance, showing off, insincerity, lying, backbiting, cheating, etc. Love of dunya, right? It took us 100 pages to speak about the different illnesses of the heart. So we're going by this book. And this is a modern book. This book was authored actually in English. It wasn't translated to English. It's authored in English by Mass Publications, Dr. Muhammad Mansour. I knew a Dr. Muhammad Mansour in Orlando, but it definitely wasn't the author of this book. So there's traditional old books and there's new books. The scholars of Islam, they always write about Tazkiyah. They call it different things. It's also known as Tasawwuf, right? Focusing on your soul and coming closer to Allah by Tazkiyat al-Nafs, or understanding what is bad and letting go of it and implementing it, or changing it, or exchanging it, or substituting it with something good. So, and lastly, he ends off with implementing worship, which is him telling us the practicality or the practicalness of this tazkiyah in our worship, in our ibadat. And Islam came, and the Sharia came, and Allah came, and the Prophet Muhammad ﷺ came to grant us tazkiyah naturally. To grant us tazkiyah, tasawwuf naturally. We see that person doesn't have to study tazkiyah in order to receive it. It's implemented as a Muslim. It's implemented in the acts of worship. However, of course, studying is great. Knowledge is great, so you can understand that this is bad and this is good. You can understand that this is bad and this is the punishment for backbiting is this, and it's Jahannam and showing off. And it's good to study, of course. But I'm saying the lay person, the layman Muslim in Cambodia. If there's a Muslim in Cambodia, there is actually. I had a friend of mine, the other from Cambodia. I'll never forget him. And the Muslim in China, or the Egyptian farmer, or the Muslim farmer in any country, he's not going to study this book. He's going to be a Muslim though, right? He was going to be born Muslim or raised Muslim, and he's going to practice Islam. Does that person have tazkiyah in his life? The answer to this question is absolutely. You say, how, Shaykh? How? We say Islam, the crux of Islam and the essence of Islam is tazkiyah, aslan. And every act of worship is salah. Act of worship is fasting, siyam. Act of worship is sadaqah, zakah. Act of worship is hajj. Act of worship is umrah. There's acts of worship, ibadat. Ibadat are different rituals that we have, that we were taught by the Prophet Muhammad ﷺ and by the Quran on how to implement them. Ritual acts of worship. Salah, we translate it in English to ritual prayer. Fasting, siyam, we translate it in English to be specific as ritual fasting. These rituals, they're Islamic rituals, they're ibadat, they're taqus diniyah, they're rituals. They all come with an underlying goal. They all come with an underlying theme. They all come to exemplify tawheed in the oneness of Allah, to grant us humility, and all acts of worship come with different forms of tazkiyah, natural forms of tazkiyah, purification, all. Salah, zakah, hajj, sawm, and that's the point of this part of the book. And that's the point, and that's the maqsad, and that's the goal of this part of the book, to understand how salah comes to purify you, and to see how salah comes to grant you humility, which is purification. Yeah? Arrogance is the opposite of humility. Arrogance is not purity. Arrogance is a big sin, and it smells bad. Purity is being humble, right? Anyway, so all acts of worship, they come to naturally purify us. And that's why the practicing Muslim, if he practices Islam properly, and he has sincerity in his heart, and he never read a book of Tazkiyah in his life, and he reaches the age of 60 years old, will he be someone who has purified himself? Yes, of course, absolutely. All acts of worship come to teach you Tazkiyah and to purify you naturally. And that's the point of them. That is the point of the acts of worship. So he starts off with giving a little intro to this last part of the book, this third part of the book, and he calls it implementing worship. He talks about it for a page. I brought some exact excerpts from the book, and then he goes into the first act of worship that he wants to touch on. Then he goes and he transitions to the first act of worship that he wants to speak about. What's he going to talk about first? Salah, of course. Salah 5 times a day, wudu, salah, masjid, Jum'ah once a week, Fajr every day, 7 days a week. You know, salah is reoccurring all the time. And it's the first act of worship that you're going to be asked about. When you get buried in the grave, when they throw dirt on you, أول ما يسأل عنه المرء يوم القيامة هو الصلاة فإذا صلحت صلح الأعمال كلها. The Prophet ﷺ, he says that on Yawm al-Qiyamah, when you're asked about everything you did, the first thing the individual will be asked about is salah. The first thing the person will be questioned about or asked about is prayer. And if his prayer was good and it was polished nice, then everything else that comes after is going to be good and nice. Salah is the amud ad-din. It's, or as the Prophet said in another narration, amad ad-din. The salah is the pillar of the religion. If the pillar is strong, then the rest of the religion is good. If someone truly does iqam as-salah in his life, if someone truly establishes salah in his life, the other acts of worship are going to be mustaqima. They're going to be good. They're going to check off. I like to think of it like a job interview. Because if you go to a job interview, if you have a job interview, the first impression you give to the interviewer is everything. Wallahi, even if you fail the next 5 questions, as long as the first impression was an A+, you did good. Yes or no? Of course. First impression means everything. If you go to a job interview and you do great in the beginning and he has a good first impression of you, everything else is going to be easy. Or if you go to an exam that's an oral exam, you know, in Azhar they have an oral exam for Quran. It's like oral, you get tested orally, and then you have a written exam. Well, it's about it. And the oral exam of Al-Azhar, you have a big sheikh here, like 3 big sheikhs. They call you in one by one. So you wait on a line outside. Sometimes an hour you wait, sometimes 2 hours you wait, sometimes it depends on where you are in the line. You wait with Kazakhstan and Uzbekistan and Tajikistan and Kyrgyzstan and Turkmenistan, and every stand, 9 stands. And you wait with Sudan and Kenya, South Sudan, West Sudan. You wait online forever and they call you in. And after being in Egypt for years, I realized there's like a cheat code, there's a hack. Not cheat, stuff like that, we don't cheat, but like there's a way to win the heart of the tester, and then khalas, you don't get tested. Wallah, he just laughs with you and jokes with you for 5 minutes and he goes, good job. Next. So that's because the good first impression is everything. So I used to go in and talk to the guy and make conversation, and I'd kill the first answer, and then after that it would be all jazz. So your first impression means a lot, and that's why salah is very important, because the first thing you're asked about is salah. So he says now, before he talks about salah, he talks about implementing worship. And honestly, the author said a lot of nice things. And this concept, like I said, is something that all the old scholars wrote about. All the old scholars and traditional scholars of Islam, they wrote about how ibadat come to purify you. Of course, they all mention this in the books of fiqh. If you read a traditional book of fiqh Hanafi, or if you read a traditional book of fiqh Shafi'i or Maliki or Hanbali, if you read the books of fiqh, when they talk about salah, for example, they talk about it from a law perspective, not a tazkiyah perspective. They're not talking about it from a Sufi perspective or a spiritual perspective. They're talking about salah from law and regulation, what you have to do for your salah to count, and what if you do it, your salah will become invalid. That's where they come from. But even then they mention how salah, or the good aspects of salah and how it purifies you, even then. And there's a scholar, his name is Muhammad al-Ghazali. He's a modern Egyptian scholar, not Abu Hamid al-Ghazali, because there's 2 famous Ghazalis in Islam. This is for you guys to know. There's 2 famous Ghazalis in Islam. The first one is known as Hujjat al-Islam. It's Abu Hamid al-Ghazali al-Tusi. He's a Shafi'i faqih, and he was from a place called Tus. Ta, Waw, Sin. Tus is in current day Iran. So if he was born today in the modern world, he would have an Irani passport, but he wouldn't be Shi'i. Because Abu Hamid al-Ghazali was born at the time when Iran was Sunni Shafi'i. And then the Safavid Empire came and they made Iran 12er Shi'i. But that's a long story. But Iran was Sunni for like 900 years. Iran was Sunni Shafi'i. And Abu Hamid al-Ghazali was born, and his father was a scholar in a village called Tus. And Tus is in Persia / Iran. And he was raised a scholar, and then he went and he became in charge of the Al-Madrasat al-Nizamiyya, the Madrasat al-Nizamiyya fi Baghdad. And this Madrasat al-Nizamiyya had many branches. It had a branch in Samarkand, it had a branch all over the Muslim world. It was like Harvard University. You ever heard of Harvard or Oxford? You have something called the best university, Harvard, Oxford, Yale. These are great prestigious, what do they call them, universities? Ivy League universities, great prestigious universities. The greatest university at that time of the Abbasids was Al-Madrasat al-Nizamiyya. And who was the Amid, or who was in charge of all of the Madaris al-Nizamiyya, was Abu Hamid al-Ghazali. So that's the first Ghazali. And he wrote books in Tazkiyah, in Tasawwuf, and he wrote books in Fiqh Shafi'i, and he wrote books in a lot of things. He was a huge scholar. That's not the Ghazali I'm speaking about. I'm speaking about Muhammad al-Ghazali. And they say that Muhammad al-Ghazali, they say that his father actually he named him after this great scholar. So Muhammad al-Ghazali was an Egyptian. He was born in a village close to Alexandria. In the Delta region of Egypt, which is the northern part of Egypt. It's the Fertile Crescent of Egypt. And he wrote a book called Muslim Character. Called Khuluq al-Muslim. Muslim character. What do you think he speaks about in the book? Muslim character. How a Muslim should act. The character of a Muslim is how a Muslim should act. How should a Muslim act? Based upon the Quran and the Sunnah and the religion of Islam, correct? Based upon the Quran and the Sunnah and the religion of Islam. And he starts off his book, Khuluq al-Muslim. This is one of his many books. He's the modern scholar. He passed away about 70 years ago. Muhammad al-Ghazali passed away about 50, 60 years ago. The modern Egyptian one. But he was also a great scholar. He was Azhari. So he wrote one of many books. It's a small book like this big. It's like 100 pages called Khuluq al-Muslim. It has about 22 chapters in it. The first chapter of his book, Khuluq al-Muslim, which is Muslim character, talks about acts of worship and how they are central in granting someone tazkiyah, and how they're central in rectifying someone's character. Because the person who prays should not be someone who lies and cheats and steals. It doesn't make sense. The person who fasts should not be a bad person. It doesn't make sense. So if someone's fasting and praying and he's still evil, something is wrong. Something is incorrect. That's the point of the book. And this book, so this author, Dr. Muhammad Mansour, he mentions implementing worship. He says, Allah prescribed upon us acts of worship. So there's underlying goals for each act of worship. Like we said, and the ultimate theme of the acts of worship is to grant you good character and to purify you. That's the ultimate goal of the act of worship. Allah prescribed upon us acts of worship that are designed to empower our faith. The point of the act of worship is to grant you strength in your iman. Sah? The point of the act of worship is to empower your faith, shape our character, rectify our character, make us good people of good character, and better our individual and collective human condition. And the act of worship, the ibadat, are meant to better our individual and collective human conditions, yani better our communities. People of worship should be people who act right in society, right? Worship in Islam, he goes on to say, worship in Islam is not merely rituals. He goes on to say, worship in Islam is not just rituals with no meaning. Rituals in Islam, ibadat, which are rituals, they're ritual acts of worship, they're not yoga and Pilates. They're not something that is void of meaning. No, there's something that has deep meaning behind it, right? Not to offend yoga and Pilates. I'm sure there's meanings there too, but we're talking about rather it is an expression of our obedience and submission to the Creator. Rather, on the contrary, ibadat are an expression of our obedience and our submission to the Creator. It is also an invaluable tool of self-purification. He goes, the ibadat are also self-purification. They do tazkiyah naturally, like I said in the intro, and personal development. And they also grant you growth. This is so true. Ibadat discipline you. Ibadat really, really discipline you. They grant you self-growth. The Muslim who practices and prays is a disciplined individual. He stands out. The one who wakes up for Fajr, the example we always give it, you wake up for Fajr, it makes you disciplined, brother. You're waking up when you want to sleep, it's discipline. It takes discipline. Not only do you get up, you can't just get up and pray. I wish you could just get up and pray and you could sleep right away. You got to get up. Relieve yourself so you could pray with khushu'. And you're going to, excuse me. You got to make wudu. Once you make wudu for Fajr, khalas. You're up. You're up, brother, you're up. So then if you come to the masjid, you're up. Like you're going to exit the house, it's going to be it's going to be 20 degrees outside. Start your car. My car this morning. I took it to the mechanic. He says, you have to get he said, there's a problem with the kahraba. I was like, Allahu Akbar. He said it is also an invaluable tool of self-purification and personal development. It makes you strong. Being a Muslim is strong. As indicated in the Quran tells us all the time about this. Every act of worship should leave a mark on our hearts. He ends up his first segment of implementing worship by saying this beautiful paragraph. Every act of worship should leave a mark on your heart. Wow, so beautiful. Everything you do, every act of worship you do, it should leave an effect on your qalb. And this is the ultimate truth. When you pray salah, you should feel uplifted. You should feel a tingling, I like to call it a tingling sensation. Good feeling. You feel a good feeling when you pray. You feel a good feeling. Excuse me. You feel a good feeling when you pray salah. When you come to Salat al-Jum'ah, inshallah you're not coming to the masjid only for Jum'ah. Inshallah you're coming to the masjid a lot more than that. But many people, the only time they come to the masjid is Jum'ah. And we don't want to judge. There's many people that don't even go to Jum'ah. We have something called the Eid Muslim. So some people, they come to the masjid only on Eid. And they come and they don't even pray. They just stay outside, they take selfies and pictures and then they exit. May Allah protect us and grant us understanding. When you pray salah, it makes you feel good. When you fast, it makes you feel good. When you give zakah, it makes you feel good. All acts of worship, they have different feelings in the heart. And we mention this all the time. All acts of worship, they grant different feelings in your qalb. Being good to your parents grant a different feeling. So he says, every act of worship should leave a mark on your heart, refresh our spirits, and bring us closer to Allah. Ultimately, they bring you closer to Allah. They grant you a close proximity to Allah. And of course, we're not talking about a physical proximity. We're talking about a spiritual closeness to Allah. You feel close to Allah when you do good. And you feel far from Allah when you're in sin. The person who's in a life of sin, the person who doesn't pray, he doesn't feel close to God, he feels unworthy. So it brings us closer to Allah. Worship should recharge us and push us to do good. Worship should grant you a spiritual recharge. Your ibadah should grant you a recharge. And it should push us to do good. And it also pushes you to do good. Worship should push you to be a good person. When worship, then he says, when worship, good character, action, and spiritual renewal come together, when all of these things come together, worship, good character, spiritual renewal, and action, they shape a complete Muslim personality. They grant the Muslim the right way to be, and the right way he should act, and the way his personality is complete, when he implements everything properly. So then he goes on. To talk about salah. And he says prayer. And before I read what he says, because he says a lot of good things, I want to speak a little about salah from my heart. So, salah is very interesting. Salah is a gift. It's an obligation, of course. It's a strong obligation and it's a gift. It's one of the 5 pillars of Islam. The Prophet ﷺ, he says in a hadith, narrated by Abdullah ibn Umar, بُنِيَ الْإِسْلَامُ عَلَى خَمْسٍ شهادة أن لا إله إلا الله وإقام الصلاة وإيتاء الزكاة وصوم رمضان وحج البيت من استطاع إليه سبيلا. The Prophet ﷺ, he says in a hadith by Abdullah ibn Umar, it's a famous hadith. He said Islam was established on 5 pillars. This religion of Islam, it was established on 5 pillars. Meaning these things are very, very important and they're strong. Not only are they obligations, because there's many obligations. There's not only 5 obligations in Islam, there's hundreds. Not only are these things obligations, they're the strongest of all obligations. And the religion of Islam is based upon them. Without them, the religion will crumble. Because of a pillar of a house, if you take a pillar of a house out, the house falls. The pillar is what holds the house up strong. So the first pillar that the Prophet mentions, of course it's going to be the most important one because nothing counts without it, is the shahada. It's to bear witness and testify that Allah is Allah and He's one, and that Muhammad is His final prophet and messenger. The Shahada is the most important thing in the world, because no other pillar comes without the Shahada. And then the second pillar that comes, always. What's the second one to be mentioned is Salah. Salah. The Prophet ﷺ, he's on his deathbed. He was passing away. You know when you pass away, when you're passing away on your deathbed, you're going to say the most important thing, because effort is exerted to speak when you're dying. Like you're tired and you're sick and you're passing away, you're going to speak something, the last thing you're going to say. You're going to tell your brother, I love you, I'm sorry, forgive me, please forgive me. You're going to tell your brother when he's staring at you, when you're dying. Hopefully he's there so you could apologize. People sometimes they have problems with family, The Prophet ﷺ, the last thing he said, he goes, as-salah, 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 wa ma malakat aymanukum. He said, salah, and those who are the low class of society, look after the low class of society. But he says salah 3 times. The last thing he says before he dies is salah, meaning safeguard your salah. And like I said, the first thing we'll be asked about is salah. Salah is a gift, and salah is a pillar, and it's the first pillar. It's the first pillar mentioned after the shahada. We say, why is that? We ask a question and we say, why is salah the first pillar that the Prophet ﷺ mentions after La ilaha illallah wa anna Muhammadan abduhu rasuluh? We said that that's the key to Islam. Then salah is always mentioned first. Salah is always mentioned first because truly it is the most important pillar. It is. All 5 pillars are important, but salah is the most important. We say, why is it the most important? We say it's the most reoccurring. We say it's the most reoccurring and most encompassing act of worship. And I'm going to explain this. It's the most reoccurring and it's the most encompassing act of worship. Encompassing, what do you mean? Encompassing meaning who has to perform it is the most. Who falls under the category of they have to pray is the most. Most reoccurring, why? Salah is the most reoccurring because it's every single day, 7 days a week, 5 times a day. Fajr, Dhuhr, Asr, Maghrib, Isha. You finish Isha, you feel relaxed for 2 hours, you feel relaxed. 2 hours of comfort, you go home, you set your alarm for Fajr. You're immediately thinking of the next Salah. You pray Fajr and you think of Dhuhr. You exit the masjid in the winter, you exit Dhuhr and you come back in 5 minutes later for Asr. And then you leave Asr and you just wait for Maghrib because Maghrib is 5 minutes later. Like every 5 minutes Salah, wudu, Salah is all the time. It comes all the time and it comes to inconvenience your schedule. And we say that this inconvenience is the greatest gift. This inconvenience that you're gifted is a gift, because the Muslim is always thinking of Salah and the Muslim is always clean. You're always pure, wudu, Salah, washing up properly, wudu, Salah, like you're always clean and you're always thinking of Allah. And this is the greatest gift. And this inconvenience, if you have Salah as an inconvenience, it means you're a mu'min. If Salah is an inconvenience for you, you're a mu'min. Perhaps the adjective or perhaps the word I'm using is not appropriate, inconvenience. But it comes in reality as an inconvenience. That's the truth. But we embrace the inconvenience. And the Muslim, he loves this inconvenience. He loves it. He loves it that he goes to do something and all he's thinking about is Salah and he's agitated until he prays. And then once he prays, he feels a sense of comfort in his heart. Only the Muslim knows what I'm talking about. The person who doesn't pray does not know what I'm talking about. The person who does not do iqamah salah in his life does not know what I'm speaking about. May Allah guide us, may Allah guide us. We see people, like we interact with people, not to judge. We're not judging, I'm just saying we see people, family members, this, that don't pray. It doesn't concern them. Can you compare the one who prays to the one who doesn't pray? It's 2 completely different lifestyles. And the person who doesn't pray and he starts praying properly, he doesn't know how he lived before. He doesn't know how he was alive. He doesn't know how he lived before. He goes, I was miserable. Every day I was miserable. Salah is a gift. Salah is the only obligation. This prayer is the only obligation that Allah brought Prophet Muhammad ﷺ up to him so he could command it to him. Straight, no intermediary. It's so blessed. Salah is so blessed that he said, look, I'm not going to send Jibreel down with the command of Salah. Siyam, Hajj, Birr al-Walidain, Husn al-Jar, everything in the Quran, Jibreel alayhi salam sends it down to the Prophet, right? It's wahi, revelation. Quran is revelation, except for Salah. Allah brought the Prophet up to him so he could speak to him in the heavens and command him with Salah. Salah was gifted to the Prophet. We said it was the most reoccurring, and I explained that. It comes 5 times a day, every single day. You never have a vacation from Salah unless you're a female, right? And it's the most encompassing. What do we mean by encompassing? What do we mean by encompassing? The most people that have to perform Salah, or the most people that Salah is obligatory on, is prayer. The most act of worship, the act of worship that encompasses the most people is Salah. What does this mean? What are the conditions? What are the shurut for someone who has to pray? What does it mean that I have to pray salah now? Does anyone know? Does anyone want to raise their hand? What? No, rhetorical question. I'm going to answer because we're running out of time. What is it that makes someone have to pray salah? A couple of things. Does the Christian in the church have to come pray salah to dhuhr? The Christian in the church. According to Imam Shafi'i, he does. But no, according to the majority, no, he doesn't. هل الكفار مخاطبون بالتكاليف الشرعية? It's a question in Usul al-Fiqh that the jurists they differ on. Is that the non-Muslim, are they commanded with the same obligations as a Muslim? Are they commanded? It's a big difference of opinion. It's a philosophical difference. It's a philosophical difference of opinion. Some jurists, like Imam Shafi'i, say yes, they are. They are, because they should be Muslim. And the command of Allah and the command of the Prophet is for everyone. And the other majority, they say no, if you're a Muslim, then you have to pray. Of course, if you're a Christian and you're going to, the church here or the church here, you don't have to pray salah. You could go to church. But, so to be a Muslim, salah, to be a Muslim, and to be something called mature or hitting the age of puberty, and maturity is not an age. It's an occurrence. It's something that it's a sign. Maturity for the girl is when she becomes pregnant or she has a menstrual cycle, she becomes mature. And this age varies. Sometimes it's 11, sometimes it's 12, sometimes it's 10, depending on the climate and the culture and the genes and the DNA of the female. And for the boy, it's to have a nocturnal emission or, to have a release. So that's puberty. So to be mature and to be a Muslim. And there's one more thing, and that's it. Do you have to have a certain amount of money in order for salah to be obligatory in your conscience? Do you have to own a certain amount of money in your TD bank account? No. The poor person, the farmer, the engineer, the millionaire, all pray salah, correct? Do you have to be a certain race or color to pray? No. So salah is Muslim, mature, and Yeah, aql, correct. Sanity, correct, aql. The person who is insane, رفع عن القلم, the pen has been lifted for the person who does not have a working, who's insane. So to be sane, to be cognizant and aware, right? So if you possess these three things, my brother and sister, you have to pray salah. And that's inshallah all of us. Inshallah, none of us are insane here, inshallah. So salah is a big deal. The Prophet ﷺ, he brings the Prophet Muhammad ﷺ up to the heavens to give him the command of salah. And I say that it's a gift. And I say this salah was a gift that Allah gave all his prophets and messengers. It was a tool that he gave them to persevere. Allah, he says in Surah Al-Baqarah, يَا أَيُّهَا الَّذِينَ آمَنُوا اسْتَعِينُوا بِالصَّبْرِ وَالصَّلَاةِ إِنَّ اللَّهَ مَعَ الصَّابِرِينَ. Allah, he says in Surah Al-Baqarah, giving us the medication on how to persevere through dunya, giving us the prescription and the remedy on how to combat the difficulties of this world. Allah, he says, O you who have believed, seek assistance, isti'anat, seek assistance, bis-sabri wal-salah, with patience and prayer. Inna Allah ma'a sabirin. Indeed, Allah is with those who are patient. Allah commands us Muslims, you're going through any difficulty, no problem, seek assistance with what? Not through alcohol, not through weed, not through smoking cigarettes, not through haram on the internet. That's not what you seek assistance with. That brings you darkness and misery in your life. That ruins your life. No, you seek assistance with good things. What are the two things that God tells us? The ulama of tafsir, they call these as-sadani, the two sads. Sabr, sad, sa, ba, ra. Sabr and salah. Sa, lam, alif, ta, mabuta, right? Sabr and salah. These two things, you hold on to them with your molar teeth. You know your molar teeth? You hold something down tight. You hold on to sabr and salah and you never let go of either of them because they get you through everything in this world. Because sometimes you ride Noah's Ark and the waves are really, really big. You don't want to fall off the ark. You want to remain on the ark. How? You cling to sabr and salah. You go through difficulties in this world. Everyone is going through a different test and difficulty. The only thing you could do is hold on to sabr and salah. It's what gives you, it's the tool you use to navigate the difficulties of this world. It's the only thing that can grant you mental clarity, grant you a clean conscience, and to grant you the ability to persevere through the difficult. And everyone's difficult is different. Everyone's test is different. وَالْبَلَايَا وَالْمِحَنْ مُتَنَوِّعَةً. They are various. The different tests and the different tribulations that people go through are various. And I was saying that Allah, subhanahu wa ta'ala, He granted all His prophets and messengers. He granted all His anbiya and rusul this tool of salah. I say this tool, this gift of salah. We were mentioning on Wednesday night, we were speaking about Surah Al-Qasas and Musa alayhi salam meeting Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. And I was bringing verses from Surah Taha as well, and we said that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, He spoke to Musa alayhi salam at the burning bush or at the bush of light. And he said, it is me, I am Allah, فَاعْبُدْنِي وَأَقِمِ الصَّلَاةَ لِذِكْرِي. We mentioned this on Wednesday. Musa alayhi salam, and we talked about how salah, the way that we pray is specific to the Ummah of Muhammad. But did all the prophets and messengers before the prophet, they had salah, or a version of prayer. إِنَّنِي أَنَا اللَّهُ لَا إِلَهَ إِلَّا أَنَا فَاعْبُدْنِي وَأَقِمِ الصَّلَاةَ لِذِكْرِي. Musa alayhi salam, he's walking in the desert. He goes into to get help with this fire. He goes and he finds Allah speaking to him. What does God tell him in Surah Taha? إِنَّنِي أَنَا اللَّهُ لَا إِلَهَ إِلَّا أَنَا. He goes, oh Moses, it is me, I am Allah, there is no God but me. He goes, yeah Moses, yeah Musa, it's me, I'm Allah, there is no God but me. And then he tells them, فَاعْبُدْنِي وَأَقِمِ الصَّلَاةَ لِذِكْرِي. The first thing he commands Musa to do, the first thing, before go to Fir'aun, before anything, the first thing he has to do is to worship Allah, because the worship of Allah is what's going to get you through everything. فَاعْبُدْنِي وَأَقِمِ الصَّلَاةَ لِذِكْرِي. And then he tells him how he's going to worship him. He says, worship me, and then he says, وَأَقِمِ الصَّلَاةَ لِذِكْرِي. And then he says, and establish the prayer for my remembrance. Subhanallah, man. He tells Musa, establish the salah the same way he told the Prophet Muhammad to establish the salah. It's the same thing. This tool he gives Musa helps Musa navigate the difficulties he's about to go through. It's going to grant Musa ease. And that's what salah does for you as a Muslim. It grants you ease in your heart. It grants you comfort in your heart. It grants you tranquility and sakina in your heart. And I said this, and I'll say it again. The person who prays, does the person who prays not have any problems? And the person who doesn't pray have problems? Brother, we're both in dunya. We're in dunya, we're in New Jersey, they're in New Jersey, 07508. We're same zip code, same everything's 973-201, 862. We're all the same. We're all human beings, we're all going through dunya. Does the person who prays not have difficulties in this world? No. The person who prays has difficulties, just like anyone else that's a human being living in dunya. And the person who doesn't pray has difficulties, he's a human. What's the difference between the two? The one who prays has mental clarity and he's calm. This salah gives him the ability to persevere properly. It's the secret cheat code on how to navigate the difficult. To grant you patience in prayer, it grants you light in your heart. So the person who prays, he's equipped with this tool that helps him persevere and make it through it. Make it through. And people put on a good face, Someone who doesn't pray, you think he's all miserable? No, I'm not saying every single human on earth is miserable. People go through stuff. It's difficult to get through it without Allah. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is your source of solace and comfort. So he grants Musa this tool. Not only does he grant Musa this tool, he grants this tool to all the prophets. Look what he says. Isa alayhi salam is in the cradle. Cradle is a baby, you put him in the cradle, right? His mom points, فَأَشَارَتْ إِلَيْهِ قَالُوا كَيْفَ نُكَلِّمُ مَنْ كَانَ فِي الْمَهْدِ صَبِيًّا. She points to her baby, Jesus, Isa alayhi salam. She points to her baby in the cradle, and they're all coming thinking that she created or she committed this big act of indecency, that she was free from, and the Quran exonerated her, and Allah exonerated her. So she points, فَأَشَارَتْ إِلَيْهِ. So she points to the baby because she was fasting to Allah, fasting as in not speaking. Her fast was not speaking. So she points to the baby. قالوا كيف. They said, how are we going to speak to مَنْ كَانَ فِي الْمَهْدِ صَبِيًّا? How are we going to speak to a baby in a cradle? What? And then he speaks, the baby speaks, and this is a specific miracle to the Muslims. Us in the Quran, we have the story of Isa alayhi salam. They don't have it in Christianity. قال إني عبد الله آتاني الكتاب وجعلني نبيا. Isa alayhi salam, he speaks as a baby in the cradle. He goes, I am the slave of Allah. قال إني عبد الله آتاني الكتاب. He granted me a book. Isa alayhi salam was granted the Gospels, the Injil, right? وجعلني نبيا. And he made me a prophet. Then he goes, وجعلني مباركا أينما كنت. وَجَعَلَنِي مُبَارَكًا أَيْنَمَا كُنْتُ. And he made me blessed. Anywhere I walked and anywhere I go is blessed. Oh, subhanallah. You go to the Church of Nativity now, they have any place where Isa walked, slept, went into the water is blessed now. Everyone goes and they have ziyarat and they have pictures, right? He even says, and he granted me barakah anywhere I go. وَأَوْصَانِي بِالصَّلَاةِ وَالزَّكَاةِ مَا دُمْتُ حَيًّا. And he commanded me, Isa saying to them in the cradle, and God commanded me with salah, with prayer, and with zakah, ma dumtu hayya, as long as I was alive. And Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala granted me salah and zakah, and He commanded me to do both these things as long as I lived. We learned from this ayah, and we learned from the ayah of Musa, that salah was not something specific to Muhammad. Salah was for all the prophets and messengers, and it was their tool to navigate the difficult. It was the gift that Allah granted them all. And we also learned that zakah was not specific to us. And like I said, our zakah, our siyam, and our salah is specific because it's the way the Prophet taught us. Last one, Ibrahim alayhi salam. In the Quran, he says, after he builds the Kaaba with Ismail, he does this amazing act that he was commanded to do by Allah. He says, رَبِّ اجْعَلْ لِي مُقِيمَ الصَّلَاةِ وَمِن ذُرِّيَّتِي رَبَّنَا وَتَقَبَّلْ دُعَاء. He makes a beautiful dua to Allah. After he makes the Kaaba, he asks Allah to accept from him. And then he says, رَبِّ اجْعَلْ لِي مُقِيمَ الصَّلَاةِ. Oh Allah, I ask you to grant me iqam as-salah in my life. He asks Allah to grant him iqam as-salah. And then he says, وَمِن ذُرِّيَّتِي. And I ask you to grant my offspring. And I ask you to grant my offspring iqam as-salah in their life. Who came from the dhurriyyah of Ibrahim? Who came from the offspring of Ibrahim? Every prophet after Ibrahim was from his dhurriyyah. Every prophet that came after, he's Abul Anbiya. Ibrahim alayhi salam's nickname is the father of the prophets and messengers. Every prophet after Abraham was from his offspring, either from Ishaq or from Ismail. Ishaq the son of Sarah, Ismail the son of Hajar. Ishaq had Yaqub, Yaqub had Joseph and the Asbat, and then every prophet was from their lineage. Every prophet from Bani Israel from here. And then here over here is who? Ismail. Ismail and his offspring, no prophets for a long time, no prophets. Ismail here, the son of Ibrahim, no prophet. And then, who is here? Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam. And Nabi al-Adnani. The Prophet Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam is from the dhurriyyah of Ismail. So the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam, Muhammad, is from the dhurriyyah of Ibrahim, of course. Ibrahim makes dua after he makes the Kaaba. He says, oh Allah, make me someone who establishes salah in my offspring. Did Allah accept his dua or what? Yeah, he made them all prophets and messengers as well. Like we said, this salah is a gift. I like to keep saying it's a gift over and over, so you don't think of it as an obligation. Of course it's an obligation, but this obligation of salah is the greatest gift. So may Allah grant us iqamah salah in our lives and to understand the value of salah. This author, he goes and he says prayer, excuse me, he says prayer is one of the most powerful tools of self-reformation. He says prayer is one of the most powerful tools of self-reformation. This salah, it reforms you. It will reform you. Anybody that did not used to pray and then he began to pray can attest to this. I can definitely attest to this. I didn't always used to pray, and Allah guided me one day and I prayed, I started praying, and my life changed like crazy. Like 180. Everything in your life changes when you pray. And then you also start to get barakah in your life. Like you start to realize, and you start to see, wallahi, this imani lens, this lens of iman, you can't have lens of iman if you don't pray. You're going to see in black and white. Iman lens means you see in color. Like you could see color, you could see like good, strong eyesight. You see strong eyesight. You could see through fake. You could penetrate through the fakeness of the screen. You could see through the fakeness of Instagram and TikTok. Fake. It agitates the person who sees through it. Get out of here. You and your fake. We don't want to fall for fake. How do you not fall for fake? You have a working brain that's granted to you by a working heart. Iman heart is what grants you a working brain. Your brain is not going to work properly if your iman is dead, if your heart is shattered, if it's shot. Your heart, the charge, the battery charge, the iman charge is through salah. Salah is the essence and the crux of iman. You can't have iman if you don't have salah. You can't, of course you could be a Muslim without salah. But I'm saying true iman is not cultivated except with salah. So it grants you reformation in your life. And it grants you the ability to see through fake and to pierce through fake. Salah, the mu'min who prays Fajr on time, he sees through fake. Of course, if you're praying culturally, of course, if you're praying with insincerity, you're not going to get the same benefits as the person who's praying for real. Because there's praying for real and there's praying to show off. There's praying for real and there's praying because you were born and raised praying and you don't know why you do up, down, right? Up, down doesn't work. Up, down only works when you pray with ikhlas in your heart, sincerity, khushu', and you enjoy salah, and you look forward for salah, and you make wudu. You ever had someone who doesn't, like he's praying but he doesn't make wudu? I don't get it, man. Why? Why are you wasting your time? Like we're having a family gathering and the guy comes, I get it, maybe he's shy, but Allah anhu. So prayer is one of the most powerful tools of self-reformation. It is the link between you and your Creator. This salah, the author says, is your link between you and your Lord. You know the word salah? It comes from something called sila. A sila is a connection. You say, أنا أتصل بصديقي. أنا أتصل. اتصال. اتصال is I'm going to call my friend. صديقي, my friend. أنا, me, I call my friend. اتصل. اتصالا. They call a conversation اتصال in Arabic. اتصال because you're connecting your phone to his phone. He's in Amman. I don't know friends in Amman. He's in Cairo. And I'm in New Jersey. And I speak to my Sudani friend in Cairo, not Egyptian, my Sudani friend. I say, hey, how are you, brother? And then we're connected. This is a connection. Salah comes from this word connection, sila, because it's a connection between you and Allah. It's a connection between you and your Creator. So if you want Allah, if you want to speak to Allah, because if you want to speak to your friend, you call him, right? You call him on the phone and you become connected, right? And then you speak to him. So if you want to speak to Allah, what's your connection to Allah? It's salah. They say if you want to speak to Allah, you pray salah. And if you want Allah to speak to you, you open the Quran and you read it, right? Because that's Allah's words. They say if you want Allah to speak to you, you read Quran. They say if you want God Almighty to speak to you directly, you read Quran. And I can say this with 100% sincerity. There's never a time you open the Quran and read it from your heart, not to show off, read it because you want to read it and your heart is like dying for it, except you'll read what was meant for you to read. You're going to read what was meant for you to hear and see. You're going to be like, oh my God, the goosebumps are going to be strong, your back is going to be up. How did God know what to tell me now? How every time I read the Quran, Allah speaks to me. This is the miracle of the Quran. If you want Allah to talk to you, if you want something, if you want to hear God tell you like what you would gotta do when you're going through something, read Quran. Read Quran with ikhlas. Every time you ever open the Quran and read it with sincerity, Allah will be telling you what you need to hear. He'll tell you what you need to hear. And then when you want to talk to Allah, you pray salah. So he said, this is the greatest link between you and your Creator. By engaging in salah, he says, by engaging in salah, you strengthen the principles of submission. The author, he goes, salah grants you some certain things. It grants you strength. It strengthens your principles of submission. Khudu'. Salah is humility and khudu' to Allah. He says this salah strengthens that. He also says it strengthens your understanding of the oneness of Allah. The tawheed understanding in your heart, it strengthens it. And gratitude in your mind and your heart. It also grants your heart and mind gratitude when you pray salah. Then he says, it is a shield against what is sinful and prohibited. He goes on to say that this salah is a shield. It's a protector against what is sinful and prohibited. This salah is a shield against what is sinful and prohibited. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, he says in Surah Al-Ankabut, إِنَّ الصَّلَاةَ تَنْهَى عَنَ الْفَحْشَاءِ وَالْمُنْكَرِ وَلَذِكْرَ اللَّهِ أَكْبَرُ وَاللَّهُ يَعْلَمُ مَا تَصْنَعُونَ. Allah, he says in Surah Al-Ankabut, speaking about the goal of salah. We were talking about that one Egyptian guy, that scholar Muhammad al-Ghazali. May Allah have mercy on him. He wrote in his book Khuluq al-Muslim, the book called Muslim Character. It's a beautiful book. The first chapter of his book, he wrote acts of worship, and he gave an ayah for each act of worship. For each act of worship, talking about the ultimate goal of each act of worship. We're going to do that here too, because we're talking about each act of worship. The Quran is the same Quran Muhammad al-Ghazali used, right? So he used the same ayah. So acts of worship have ultimate goals. Allah tells us of them in the Quran. What is the ultimate goal of fasting? What is the ultimate goal of fasting? Huh? Exactly. To achieve taqwa. Exactly. يا أيها الذين آمنوا كتب عليكم الصيام كما كتب على الذين من قبلكم لعلكم تتقون. O you who have believed, fasting has been prescribed unto you as it has been prescribed unto those before you, so that you may achieve taqwa. They say fasting grants taqwa. خذ من أموالهم صدقة تطهرهم وتزكيهم بها إن صلاتك سكن لهم. In Surah Tawbah, Allah speaks about zakah. He says, take from their money a zakah تطهرهم وتزكيهم بها. Allah says, take from their money a zakah. This zakah, this sadaqah, zakah, تطهرهم وتزكيهم بها. It grants them purity. It purifies their money and it purifies their hearts. So acts of worship, they all have underlying goals. What does Allah tell us about prayer? He says, إن الصلاة واتل عليهم ما أوحي واتل عليك أتل ما أوحي إليك من ربك وأقم الصلاة. أتل ما أوحي إليك من ربك وأقم الصلاة. Before this, the full ayah is أتل ما أوحي إليك من ربك وأقم الصلاة. Allah commands the Prophet, recite that. أتل means recite that which has been revealed to you by Allah. Allah commands Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam, أتل ما أوحي إليك من ربك. Recite that which has been revealed to you. Yani propagate the Quran. Recite it to everyone. Let everyone know about the commands of God. وَأَقِمِ الصَّلَاةِ. Then he tells the Prophet and establish salah. Then he tells the Prophet and establish salah. إِنَّ الصَّلَاةَ تَنْهَى عَنِ الْفَحْشَاءِ وَالْمُنْكَرِ وَلَذِكْرُ اللَّهِ أَكْبَرُ وَاللَّهُ يَعْلَمُ مَا تَصْنَعُونَ. And then he says, indeed the prayer. So God then tells the Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam and establish salah. And then he goes and tells the Prophet and all of us what is the salah and what it does. إِنَّ الصَّلَاةَ تَنْهَى. Indeed the prayer prohibits, protects from al-fahsha wal-munkar. إِنَّ الصَّلَاةَ تَنْهَى عن الفحشاء والمنكر. Indeed, salah prohibits, it protects from, and it stops fahsha and munkar. It stops indecency and wickedness. Or we could say it stops immorality and wrongdoing. Fahsha is immorality. It's indecency. It's lewd stuff. It's talking haram sexually, or it's doing something haram when it comes to lewd stuff. And general bad. Wal munkar. Allah says, indeed, the salah protects from indecency / immorality. And it also protects from munkar. Munkar is general wrongdoing, or evil or wickedness. My question now is to everyone, are lewd acts or indecent acts or immorality, is that also not bad? Is that also not under the category of general bad? It is. So why does Allah mention it? Sometimes Allah mentions something that could go under this other category. Like this could fall under this. It could fall under general bad. Like immorality is evil and wicked. So why does Allah say it protects from fahsha and munkar? Allah does this to highlight it, to put an emphasis on it. Salah stops someone from looking at filth on the internet. Salah protects him from that if he's praying properly. Salah stops someone from committing zina. 100%. 100%. Salah stops someone from doing haram with the opposite gender. It stops someone from this. Because if salah is on your mind, you can't do that. You can't embark upon that. You can't. For a number of reasons. There's people that used to do haram. I know this guy once was telling me, this guy, he's a reformed Muslim, may Allah guided him, may Allah bless him and grant him istiqamah. He's a beautiful person, he has a strong tawbah. He was telling me how before he didn't know Islam. He was raised a Muslim, he didn't know Islam at all. And he said he had a problem with committing a major sin a lot, fornication a lot. He was committing a lot of zina. And I go, how'd you stop? He goes, I just started praying, and I never ever did it again. I was shocked. This ayah, I was like, oh, the Quran says that. I was like, oh, subhanallah. He goes, ever since I started praying 5 times a day, I couldn't. It became inconvenience for me and this, that, and I would feel bad and it would turn my heart apart. And then this, that, he would think about doing it, but he couldn't. Because how could he do it? Because he's thinking of dhuhr after. You know what I'm saying? Like, how could you do haram and you're thinking of salah right after? How? And of course, you're gonna come and play devil's advocate. You can say, no, someone could do it and still pray. No, because the prayer is not doing its purpose. Its purpose is not being upheld properly from that person. That person is not venerating salah as he's meant to be, as it's meant to be. The person who venerates it and has it truly working, how could it happen? How could someone go steal something? How could someone go into a store and steal something if he prays salah? It's impossible. He'll go to steal if he's praying for real, and he'll think about dhuhr in 10 minutes. Like, oh, I'm going to steal this thing and I'm going to go pray dhuhr? That does not make sense. Someone's going to go do something haram and go curse or do something wrong and then go meet Allah. The person who establishes salah properly and he prays with khushu' and sincerity, all the haram he does in his life, it goes out, it withers away. Naturally. Salah protects from, as Allah tells us, from indecency and wickedness, and Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, وَلِذِكْرِ اللَّهِ أَكْبَرُ. Allah goes, indeed the prayer prohibits and it protects from indecency and wrongdoing, and then Allah says, وَلِذِكْرِ اللَّهِ أَكْبَرُ. And the remembrance of Allah is all greater. And the remembrance of God is greater than anything. Allah says, and the remembrance of Allah is greater than the haram you were going to do. And the remembrance of Allah is the greatest deterrent. Also, it could mean that, and this remembrance of Allah is the greatest thing to deter you from haram. Wallahu ya'lamu ma tasna'un, and Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, He knows everything that you do. And God Almighty knows everything that you act upon. And Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is aware of you and what you're doing and what you're going to do and what you did. In order for the prayer to give you the full fruits, the author goes on to say, in order for salah to give you the fruits of self-purification, in order for the prayer to work properly and to truly self-purify you, it must be done with khushu'. It should be done sincerely. How? Exactly what I just said. In order for the prayer to protect you from haram, it has to be done with realness, with genuineness, with ikhlas, and with khushu'. And the author goes on to say these nice things. I brought them. During wudu, he says, remember the outward purity should be paralleled by inward purity, free from worldly attachment, self-love and arrogance and envy and resentment. He goes, when you're making wudu, because wudu is purifying yourself for salah, it's a physical purity because you're using water on your hand. It's physical, right? You gurgle and put, right? Water, right? You use water to purify yourself. He goes, when you go make wudu, you should think with your head. The author's saying in our language, he goes, you should use your brain and think sometimes, Habibi. He goes, think sometimes. Go make wudu and think to yourself, what is this wudu doing to my heart? Like, go think. He goes, you're going to go make wudu, and the same way it's purifying the outside of your body, the same way the wudu is purifying you from dust and debris or whatever it is, you should be worried about your heart and the state of your heart. There's a famous scholar, his name is Imam Shrumbulali. Shrumbulali, he's from Shabra Balula. He's a Hanafi. Shabra Balula was the name of his town. It was in a place called Al-Munufiyya in Egypt. He was an Egyptian scholar, he was a Hanafi. He has a book, he has many books, but he has a book called Nur al-Idah. It's called The Light of Clarity. Nur al-Idah, The Light of Clarity. It's the first book that a Hanafi student studies in his journey of studying fiqh. So I've studied this book many times with multiple different sheikhs. I studied this book, Nur al-Idah, in Egypt with many people, with a Bengali sheikh, with a Pakistani sheikh, with a Syrian sheikh, with a Tunisian sheikh, and with 2 Egyptian sheikhs. I think I studied it about 5 times, this book. They say it's the first book you study in Hanafi fiqh when you're joining the ladder of fiqh Hanafi. And I was young, I was like 21 years old, 22 years old when I first studied this book. I'll never forget this ever. Till today, it's stuck here. Like, I was reading this guy. He says, look, during wudu, remember the outward purity should be paralleled by inward purity. And if you're going to clean your outside, make sure your inside is clean too. He goes, you should be free, your heart should be free from worldly attachment and arrogance and self-love. Like, relax, bro. Like, you love yourself a lot. And envy and resentment. This guy, Imam Shrumbulali, the famous Hanafi faqih, jurist, scholar, he was a sheikh, he's a teacher in Al-Masjid. He wrote multiple books, but he wrote one book for the young guy growing up, for the young girl growing up, and they want to study fiqh. The first thing they study is Nur al-Idah. They read it, and it's the prayer and tahara and everything. So the first chapter in his book, which is just the ibadat, this book is for the young person that's growing up, so it's just acts of worship. It's not buying and selling and rent and riba, no, it's just salah, siyam, zakah, and hajj. And before all of that, before salah comes something called tahara, which is purification, wudu and ghusl, how to perform wudu and ghusl, what types of water you could use, what makes water contaminated, what makes water najis, what makes your wudu break, what makes your wudu count, stuff like that. So the first chapter is tahara. And it's a long, heavy chapter for someone who never studied fiqh before. It's long and heavy, it takes forever. And at the end of the chapter of tahara, when he's finally done talking about wudu, types of water, types of wells, types of, like if water was drunken by a sheep, can you still make wudu with it? If water was drunken by a lion, can you still make su'ur water? And all this, that, at the very end. And he goes, oh my dear reader. Make sure you understand that, he goes, oh my dear reader, make sure you understand that focusing and worrying about your outward purity, like your wudu and your outward purity, is useless if your heart is filled with envy and showing off and insincerity. I was like, whoa, it smacked me hard. I was reading it. I was not expecting like this to come in a fiqh book. You know, fiqh is law, regulation. You have 6 conditions of wudu, 7 things that nullify wudu, 8 things that this, that. If you face the qibla, it's recommended. And it was all this stuff. And then this guy came in, he said this at the end. Wallah, it hit me so hard. Wallahi, since I read that sentence, I love this guy so much because he was real. Like, this author stands out to me in my head. When I hear his name, I say, may Allah have mercy on this guy. May Allah have mercy. This guy was sincere. Like, this guy had to do it. Like, he had to put it in there. He had to put these 3 sentences at the end of the Kitab al-Tahara. At the end of the book of purity, he goes, and oh my dear student, or oh my dear son, know very well that the Tahara al-Batin, that your inward purity is just as important as your outward purity. So what's the point of you making wudu and focusing on your outward purity if you're a bad person on the inside? And then he goes, you have to free your heart from ghil and hasad al-maghda and shahna. You have to free your heart from insincerity, from showing off, from loving yourself, from arrogance, and from having ill feelings toward other people. You have to free yourself from these things. So as Muslims, like we said, rituals are done with ultimate meanings. Wudu is meant to purify your outside, but it's also supposed to nudge you. It's also supposed to nudge you and remind you to purify your inside. The mu'min, he's pure on the outside, and he's pure on the inside. And when you make wudu, inshallah, you're being forgiven for every sin that you committed with your eyes and with your hands. It's the hadith of the Prophet. Every single drop of water is forgiveness of sins. So I had this kid in Orlando. He came up to me in the masjid one day. I was teaching him fiqh. And he comes up to me the next day. He's like 19 years old. He goes to the university there. He goes, Shaykh, I have a question. He goes, why do I have to make tawbah if I make wudu 5 times a day? And I go, what do you mean? He goes, you just gave us the hadith yesterday that every time you make wudu, the sins of your eyes go and the sins of your hand go, this, that. And he goes, so what's the point of tawbah? Like, why do we have to ask Allah for forgiveness? We're just getting forgiven all the time. And this is for minor sins. Every hadith that comes in regards to this is a forgiveness of sins. You know, there's a hadith that's the 5 prayers, the 5 al-salawat al-khams, wal-jum'ah ila al-jum'ah, wa Ramadan ila Ramadan, wal-umrah ila al-umrah, mukaffarat lima baynahunna majtanabt al-kaba'ir. The Prophet ﷺ said the 5 prayers and what is between them, Jum'ah to Jum'ah, Umrah to Umrah, Ramadan to Ramadan, they are forgiveness. They are forgiveness for everything between them. So from Dhuhr to Asr, anything you did between it, get forgiven. Majtanabt al-kaba'ir. As long as you refrained from major sins. Now the problem is we commit major sins like we did, like this one. Water. You drink water. The same way you drink water, you commit major sins. People commit major sins like it's nothing. The problem is when everyone's committing a major sin, you feel like it's nothing too. Like everyone is propagating haram, propagating tabarruj. Every girl is like propagating, taking off her hijab like it's something like she's proud of, and all the other people jump on the bandwagon. They're like, oh yeah, look at her, she's strong, she took off. What? That's a big deal. And then you go into propagate it on social media and get people like saying, oh, like, what? This is a big deal. Going to look at something haram and doing something haram and talking about zina like it's nothing. This is a big deal. Major sins. You're deprived of goodness with major sins. It's crazy. So any hadith that comes in regards to forgiveness of sins, it's minor sins. Major sin requires tawbah. A major sin requires you to cry to Allah and feel bad. A major sin requires you to feel really bad, nadam. You have to feel so bad. You have to ask Allah to forgive you. Major sins is a big deal, man. So he says, when you make wudu, make sure that you also think of your inward purity. And then he goes, upon standing in prayer, upon standing in salah, visualize. He gives some advice. He gives some advice to help you increase khushu'. He goes, upon standing in salah, visualize what it might be like to stand before Allah. And upon saying Allahu Akbar, truly internalize that meaning. He goes, upon saying Allahu Akbar. When do you say Allahu Akbar in salah? When you first start the salah, you do something called the tahrima, right? A tahrima is the entrance to salah. You say Allahu Akbar when you enter salah. Your salah does not count, by the way. Your salah does not count, by the way, if you do not verbalize Allahu Akbar in the beginning of salah. And I'm going to explain this for our salahs to count in the future. And inshallah, if you didn't do it in the past, may Allah accept. May Allah accept. This is something that's not differed upon. This is something that's not differed upon. You have to say with your tongue, Allahu Akbar when you enter salah. So look at me. I say 95% of people, if I'm sitting here watching people, like a guy comes, he prays sunnah right before Isha, he does this. And I'm staring at him, he's not moving nothing moved. Nothing was said. And I'm looking at him, his salah does not count. His salah does not count. Where did he say Allahu Akbar in his head? You have to verbalize the tahrima. You have to verbalize the takbirat al-ihram, the Allahu Akbar when you enter salah. You don't have to scream, you don't have to yell. No, you don't have to yell and scream, but you have to verbalize, your tongue has to move. Your mouth has to have movement. Movement. And you go pray Fajr at home. I've seen someone like, he's praying salah, and I'm looking at him, and nothing is moving. And after salah, you say it nicely, you don't hurt people's feelings. I'm like, brother, what surah did you read? Just ask something. He goes, I can't remember this, that. I'm like, oh, it's all good. Brother, you have to move your lips when you pray salah. You have to move your lips. There has to be a movement of the lips. Reading in your head is not reading. Recitation linguistically means moving of lips, moving. Recitation of salah. Dhuhr, you recite in Dhuhr and Asr. Silent prayer doesn't mean you're reading your head. Praying Maghrib on your own doesn't mean you're reading your head. You have to move your lips. So if you pray on your own ever after today, don't ever forget this. You say, Allahu Akbar. They say, what is the gauge, or how do we gauge what counts as recitation? They say that in a normal setting. Which means quiet. Normal setting doesn't mean in public. Normal setting doesn't mean like in somewhere where there's noise. Normal setting means you're in your room and there's quietness, right? You could hear the movements of your lips. Of course, if you're outside praying salah, you're not going to hear yourself, but there has to be a movement of the tongue and the lips. There has to be a movement. So when you enter salah, sister or brother, when you enter salah and you're praying behind the imam, you enter behind him and you do this. You have to say Allahu Akbar, not this. No, this. Allahu Akbar. Also, because we're talking about salah and prayer, when you do the tahrima, the takbirat al-ihram, That takbirah that enters you into the prayer, when you do it, there's conditions for it, by the way. There's 6 conditions for it, by the way. You have to do it standing up. You have to say that standing up. So then the question is going to come and someone's going to say, what do you mean standing up? When am I not standing up when I give it? Like, when am I not standing up when I give it? That's the question that comes. Like, when am I not? Why would I not be standing up? I'm always standing up when I give the tahimah. And then it comes to you here. Oh, the guy that comes late, he's running and he's in ruku', he just jumps on ruku', he jumps. And then no brother, no. You stand in line and you say, Allahu Akbar. And then you go to ruku'. You say Allahu Akbar again. Because there's a takbirah for the movement to ruku'. It's called takbirat al-intiqal. That's not the takbirat al-ihram. You have to enter the prayer before you go to ruku'. You have to enter the salah with the first takbirah standing up before you go to ruku'. So you come to the line and then you do this. Then you go to ruku'. You see? So make sure you do that. Make sure when you pray Fajr at home, you move your lips. Yeah? I'm not saying you have to read out loud. That's not what I'm saying. You don't have to read out loud. But there has to be a movement of the lips. Oh, that's a very good question. No, you don't have to if you are unable to. But if you pray sitting, that's a good question. I'm going to repeat the question. He says, what if you're sick or ill? Do you still have to start your prayer standing? That was his question. The person who prays sitting down, he has to start his salah standing. He has to give his takbirat al-ihram standing, unless he's unable to. Unless there's difficulty in that. Then he could start it off sitting, yes, there's no problem. Or lying down, yes. No, but many people, they pray sitting because they can't remain standing. Or they have difficulty standing. Or they can't make sujood, but they could stand. And there's difference of opinion in this. If the person who can't make sujood, does he have to stand? In the Hanafi madhab, he does not. The person who's incapable of ruku' and sujood, he doesn't have to stand. And other madhab, he does. He has to stand. Yeah. And the prayer of the sitting person, in today's world, people don't know this because it's all chairs. But back then it wasn't chairs. The prayer of the sitting person means sitting like how you sit for tashahhud. That's the prayer of the sitter. The prayer of the chair is not the prayer of the sitting person. It's the prayer of the person with sign language or al-ima' or ishara. When you pray on the chair, you do this, right? And then you do this, right? That's ishara. That's not praying sitting. The sitting prayer, there's 3 levels. There's the prayer of the standing person and the sitting person and then the person who does sign language or like with signs. The praying on this chair, I'm not saying it doesn't count. That's not what I'm saying. I'm just saying it doesn't count as the prayer of the sitter. The rules that apply to this chair are the rules that apply to the person in a hospital bed. You understand? So, but I don't want to go down this, and it seems like we're out of time too. There was a lot. I'm going to say, do we continue Salah next week? Yeah, right? There was a lot. Yeah. Okay, let me just end this one part then. Because then he goes and he gives advice. He gives advice on how to gain khushu'. So when he went and gave advice, he gave like 3 points. I was like, you know what? I'm going to I give advice too. And I put, how many did I make? 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12. I made 12. But it's good, right? We want khushu' in salah, right? You go to the Friday forum with Shaykh Osama, we get 3 questions that are just on repeat. They just put repeat on the question. One of the 3 questions that's on repeat every single Friday, every single Friday repeat is, how do I get khushu' in salah? And there's ways to increase khushu'. I brought 12, and the author brought 3. Let me just finish what he's saying here. He goes, when you say Allahu Akbar, truly internalize that meaning. First, before he said that, he said, when you stand up to pray, visualize what it might be like. He says, visualize what it might be like to stand before Allah. We said that, right? And then he says, when you say Allahu Akbar, because when you go stand to salli, then you go say Allahu Akbar, right? Like I said, from now on, when we join salah, we say Allahu Akbar, right? You have to move your tongue and your lips, right? So, internalize that meaning. What is the meaning he's talking about? Allahu Akbar has a meaning to it. Subhan Rabbil A'la has a meaning to it. Subhan Rabbil Azim has a meaning to it. At-tahiyyatu lillah, right? Right? This whole dhikr that we do. Salah is all dhikr in Quran. It's all tasbih, tahmeed in Quran. The Prophet ﷺ, he said, inna salata hada la yasluhu fihi shay'un min kalam an-nas. The Prophet gave a hadith one time. He was teaching his companions because now salah was a new thing for them. Like he had to teach them like it's like brand new. So he goes, this prayer, can you imagine? They didn't have salah, so now they have salah. So perhaps there was a companion, he had an iPhone, so he got a call and he would talk in the middle of the salah. Of course, I'm joking, but they had equivalents. They had similar things. They would be in prayer and they'd talk to each other, or burp or something. I don't know. They would do certain things that would be bad. The Prophet would be like, what's this guy doing? Like he's looking around in salah and everything. So there's so many hadith with the Prophet ﷺ teaching them. There's so many hadith with the Prophet Muhammad ﷺ. There's so many hadith with the Prophet ﷺ teaching his companions how to pray and teaching them like you don't do that when you pray. You don't move your chest when you pray. You don't move when you pray. You pray next to each other when you pray. Not one person here and one person on left field and one person by home base. Like everyone has to pray next to each other. So there's one hadith he goes, this prayer that we have, لا يصلح فيه شيء من كلام الناس. Nothing from the speech of humans is allowed in it. Kalam al-nas means nothing from non-Quran is allowed in it. And you can't talk in salah. Can you talk in salah? Of course not. You can't speak in salah. Can you speak in salah? Of course not. But what can you recite in salah? Quran. Right? You can recite Quran in tasbih and tahmeed. That's why when you correct someone in salah for making a mistake, and this is another topic I want to bring up. Ya Allah, we got to make a khutbah about this. People are excited to correct someone. Bro, relax. You don't correct someone all the time. Relax. Good job, man. You memorize something is nice. But this correction of the imam is to help the imam, not to make him more nervous. And if the imam doesn't make a strong mistake or a big mistake, you leave him alone. You don't have to correct him. Anyway, so when you correct the imam in salah, what do you say? To get his attention. When you correct him, subhanallah, correct. Subhanallah. When the imam makes a mistake, you say subhanallah. And the woman, what does she say? Nothing. Woman, quiet. Woman does not say nothing in salah. She's quiet. She does this. Right? Downstairs, we're not going to hear you. Khalas. Inshallah, Allah accepts it. We're going to see, if you ever study fiqh, you see the women here and the men here. Of course, we're different. Allah created us different. We're different people, right? Different genders. So the woman has certain things that she does. Like the Prophet, like the scholars, the fiqh, they differ where you put your hands in salah, right? For the man. They differ. There's multiple opinions. One opinion is on the chest. One opinion is on the navel. One opinion is under the navel, where the hand goes for the man. No one differs on the woman. All of the fuqaha say the woman on her breasts here, because it's more modest of her. And the prayer of the woman always comes to what is more modest of her. Modesty is always everything when it comes to the woman. The woman doesn't yell out subhanallah. The woman doesn't yell out ameen. No. To herself, modest, quiet, right? So when you say subhanallah when you're trying to catch the imam or tell him of a mistake. Why do you say subhanallah? You're going to tell him, imam, mistake. You missed the ruku'. Your salah's messed up. And if the imam responds to you without speaking, if he responds and listens to what you said, his salah's over as well. Everyone's over. We're going to restart the prayer. 10 minutes just went. Do you understand what I'm saying? Like if you speak to the imam, if you speak to him and he responds by doing what you told him when he's in salah, it's him responding to your speech. And they say that it nullifies the prayer. The other thing is, people don't know this. Like if you're sitting outside and someone's praying and he makes a mistake, bro, be quiet. Don't talk. You're outside of the prayer. You cannot speak to him. You're outside of the salah. If he responds to what you tell him, his salah is nullified. The guy sitting outside with the Quran in his hand and he makes a mistake in salah, reading the verse wrong, and the guy outside corrects him. Be quiet, brother. Be quiet. If he takes that correction from him, his salah is nullified. He's outside of the prayer. The person in the prayer that's connected to the prayer can correct the person in the prayer with him. There's rules and regulations. There's like law, books, 20-volume books on things, So there's nothing from the speech of humans that's allowed in salah, right? So my point is that everything in the prayer has meanings. So if the Prophet taught us that Allahu Akbar is the commencement of the prayer, takbirah, and the Prophet taught us that when you go to each ruku' or rukun, there's a Allahu Akbar, that means there's a reason why we say Allahu Akbar, of course, because the Prophet taught us Allahu Akbar, but there's a reason for it. And then you say Subhana Rabbil Azim in the ruku', and then you say Subhana Rabbil A'la in sujood. There's a reason for it. And then there's certain du'ats that you can make. So the author says, know the meaning of these things. What does Allahu Akbar mean? When you start salah, you're reminding yourself that God is greater. So you say Allahu Akbar, you're reminding yourself Allah is greater than everything I'm doing. Allah deserves my attention now. Allah is greater than my work, and Allah is greater than my wife, and Allah is greater than my husband if you're a wife, and Allah is greater than everything right now. Right? So when reading Quran in your prayer, contemplate the meanings of the verses so that you are motivated to act upon them during different positions in salah, and during your praises, thanks, and supplication. Think about the greatness, mercy, and power of your Creator. When joining a congregational prayer, notice how no movement occurs without the leader and how everything is done in unison. And then we'll continue next week. And those last 3 points, I'm going to repeat them next week because I just rushed through them. So next week, he gives advice on how to increase khushu', and then I also put something together on how to increase khushu', and that's very important. So we won't rush. We'll do salah again next week, inshallah, and then we'll do fasting. So we ask Allah to grant us understanding and wisdom. We ask Allah to bless our time, to grant sincerity in all our actions and all our sayings. We ask Allah to make us people of istiqamah, steadfastness, to be people who establish salah, and to pray properly, and to learn the rulings of salah. We ask Allah to be with our brothers and sisters in Gaza and Sudan, and our brothers and sisters all over the world. Wa sallallahu ala sayyidina Muhammad wa ala alihi wa sahbihi wa sallam. See you on Wednesday.